on the employer's site. So it's like, for instance, if you had an interview with University of Houston, they would invite you out to the campus, and of course you'll have to coordinate parking. And phone interviews, it's typically like a screening, more so like a get to know you, like, are you fit for this role? They typically ask about your work history, maybe one or two behavior questions. They typically only last between 10 and 15 minutes. And of course, virtual interviews, it's going to be the same as in-person interviews, that same format, only you'll be at home or wherever you are on a computer, typically Zoom, Skype, or Microsoft Teams. And pre-recorded interviews are, it's so once you log on, it'll be someone speaking to you pre-recorded, and they'll ask you a few questions and you can record your response. Sometimes they let you record your response more than once, but typically it's you only have that one chance to respond.
All right, so now following along with the types of interviews, we are now going to transition and give you some tips as it relates to the specific type of interviews. Even the slide cute, y'all, has we're following along with the theme for today. And so did you want to go ahead and talk about the different tips as well?
Yeah, so with in-person interviews, first and foremost, once you get that information of where your interview is located, me personally, I would like maybe drive by the location, check for parking, all of that good stuff, because you're in a big city, it can get quite confusing, especially if your interview is downtown. You want to make sure you have like a pad folio with your resume and cover letter, water. Also, maybe chew some gum or mints before your interview, but don't go into the interview with that. And if you're not driving, you want to coordinate travel arrangements. And if you are driving, I would suggest putting the address in like Google Maps or Apple Maps before you head to the interview, just to know what time you should leave. And always make sure business professional attire. And with phone interviews, you want to make sure you're in a quiet space. Do not eat, chew gum, drink water, chew ice, none of that while you're talking, because if they're talking, they still can hear you drinking or eating or chewing gum. And also, you want to make sure you talk really slow, so that, well, not really slow, but not extremely fast, so that they can understand you. And phone interviews, the recruiter typically does most of the talking. So if you have a question, I guess another tip would be to have a notepad and a pen to write down those questions for the end of the phone interview, so that you're not interrupting the interviewer. And also listen. And when you're listening, take notes. And for virtual interviews, a lot can happen with technology. So you want to test your webcam, test your microphone. Always look in the webcam when you're speaking. Make sure your internet connection is stable. So for instance, if you have a virtual interview, you have to present something, you want to make sure all of your tabs are closed, because when you share your screen, they can see whatever you have open. And of course, dress professionally, listen, nod, smile, those nonverbal cues, and also have a notepad and pen to take notes.
Thank you. And I do want to chime in here with the virtual setting. We all know that we kind of got a taste of the virtual setting during COVID. And so, one of the things that, even though you're still in that virtual setting where it says dressing professional, although you could be at home or virtual, right, you still want to make sure that you're dressed at least from the waist up. Right. And so they're not going to necessarily see anything below that, but you still want to make sure that from the waist up, you're groomed well, shirts, everything looks good, at least from the waist up. Okay, so definitely want to throw that out there. Okay, thanks, Toya.
Problem.
All right, so being saying all of that. All right, so what happens if, let's just say, your video or audio stops working? So before the interview, excuse me, you want to make sure that you ask the interviewer for some type of contact information just in case you get disconnected. Okay, just in case you experience technical difficulties. And so if the video does cut out, one of the things that you want to make sure that you do is either call them with a phone number that they've provided you with, or you can ask to continue the interview by phone, or you can even reschedule just if the technology is just not on your side, because we understand things happen, so it's okay. Now, if the noise interrupts, the conversation. How many of you, like me, I have a pet, and a lot of times he
Mhm.
just goes crazy whenever actually start working, and I'm like, you've been quiet all day, but now when I'm getting and talking to people, now you want to start going crazy. So if noises, sirens, construction, all these things, if they interrupt your video, just apologize and say, I do apologize for the interruption, and you can ask for a few seconds to just kind of, let the noise subside. If you have pets, right, you could politely mute, turn your video off, get your dog, do whatever you have to do, and then come back. Okay. And so you want to mute the microphone if the noise is severe. Okay. Now, if you live by a train and all these different factories and stuff, I get it, right? You can't change that, but just be very cautious about that. And then if someone enters the room unexpectedly, which sometimes we have spouses, brothers, sisters, parents, it's okay. But if family members or anyone, if they enter the room, apologize, okay, first and foremost to the interviewer. And like I said, ask for a few moments to mute your microphone and turn off your camera, step away, so that you can deal with the interruption. And then you're going to make sure that the room is secure before beginning the interview again. Okay. And this is provided to us by Indeed Video Interview Guide. Okay. Like I mentioned, if you have questions, feel free, you can include those in the chat box. All right. So, getting prepared for your interview. What should you do? Right. So, the first thing is know yourself. All right. You'll need to be prepared to speak about yourself. And so, the first thing is knowing who you are. And so, what makes you unique? You want to be able to reflect on your story, or in my sense, I like to say your career journey or your career story or trajectory. You want to be able to spend some time in reflective introspection about the choices or the career choices that you've made. And then it will give you, right, a good idea of the things that you value in your work life. And so, just to even throw out there some of the things that you can do to assess yourself, right? We have a focus to vocational assessment that we offer, that if you needed to assess your skills, your interests, your values, just to get that picture of who you are, we do offer that vocational assessment. I don't know if you all are familiar with like 16 personalities, or, these different personality tests. Feel free to take that, right? So that you can know who you are. And so then you also want to think about, what are your strengths, right? What do I truly care about, and what am I working on? And so I like to say that you want to have substance. You want to be able to talk about something, but most importantly, you want to be able to talk about yourself. And I actually need to pause here to say that also knowing yourself, you have to be confident in talking about yourself. And so that is something I encourage you, is to develop the confidence to know yourself, to be able to talk about yourself. Okay. And so these are the things that we're encouraging you to put into your toolkit, to be able to be prepared to speak about yourself. Okay, so moving along, knowing the employer. Okay, this is where it's on you to study the job description and understand what they need. I definitely think that as it relates to the job description, do you have that connection? Right? They're going to want to know, do you have that connection? And you want to be able to compare what the employer is seeking to your qualifications side by side. One of the things I like to encourage students is that use their words against them. So, for example, in the job description, if they're saying that they're looking for a charismatic um, person or whatever, then are you charismatic, right? We have to do that self reflection. If they say that they want you to have 3 to 5 years of experience, well, are we doing the self reflection to see if we meet the qualifications for that job? And I will go ahead and give you all a tip. Feel free, take the job description, print out the job description, and use it as a checklist to do some self assessment. So if they have the list of the qualifications, are you checking next to the ones that you actually are? Oh, I have a bachelor's degree, or oh, I have this particular skill, right? That will give you the idea of what it is you're going into. All right, you're going to use tools like maybe Vault, Career Search, Glassdoor, or the Riley Guide for an overview of the organization and an industry profile. A lot of times you can find out who the industry is by going to their website to look at their company mission, values, and goals. It looks good when you've done your research. Okay, so I'll go ahead and deem that again. It looks good when you are doing your research and you know the employer. Okay, so we got to know ourselves. We have to know the employer, and then we have to research the employer. Okay, so you're going to visit their website to ensure that you understand, right, of what they do. Now, one of the things I don't want you to do is when you go into the interview, say, "What do you do?" Because then they're going to say, "Well, did you do the research?" So this is where researching the employer is very pivotal. Right, you're going to review the organization's background and the mission statement. You are also going to assess their products, services, their clientele. You could potentially read recent press releases for an insight on the projected growth and the stability of the company. So, for example, if you wanted to go into tech and you wanted to go work for Apple, right? Are you staying up to date with the most updated releases? Right? Are you tuning in to the webinars where they're talking about all of these things? So you want to be able to make sure that you are familiarizing yourself with what's going on in the industry so that you're able to take these things and go into your interview with those. And then once again, it looks good when you've done your research. Get perspective, right? You're going to review trade or, look at business publications, and then you're going to seek perspective and a glimpse into their industry, right? So overall, researching the employer will allow you to see who these people are, what do they do, and most importantly, kind of do some assessment to see like, do I like this? Would I be a good fit for this particular company or organization? Okay. And I do want to pause before we move on. And so at this time, are there any questions before we move on? Okay, feel free. You can raise your hand. You can place them in the chat box. But I do want to pause at this time to ask any questions. Okay, and there was something I do want to make an announcement. There was something that was placed in the chat box from Toya that today we are having an event for our seniors, and we're having the first senior to drop in for a mock interview between 1 and 3 that will receive a special bag, and then the 14th senior to arrive will also receive a great surprise as well. Okay, so definitely wanted to announce that. All right. Hearing none, I will go ahead and move forward. So, some other things that you want to be mindful for are nonverbals. Okay. I know me, a lot of times my facial expressions, they show on my face, but want to make sure that you are mindful of either a hard or a weak handshake. So, for example, if you're going in person and they go in to shake your hand, is it a firm handshake? Are you making eye contact when you make that handshake, right? So making sure that you're mindful of that. Also being mindful of nervous facial expressions. I know that sometimes we get nervous, right? But you don't want that to show on your face. Slouching in the chair, so sitting back like this, things like that. So making sure that your posture and everything is good. So sitting up, chest, out, shoulders back, and just making sure that you have your feet planted and not just slouching in the chair. Uh-oh. Can you all still hear me? I'm sorry. I had a technical difficulty. Can you all still hear me? A
We can
thumbs
hear
up would. All right, perfect. Thank you. Also playing with items, right? I'm kind of biased about playing with items because, like, for example, me right now, I have my fidgeter spinner in my hand, so I can't tell you not to play with the items, but what you're not gonna do is have it in the camera like this, like, yeah, answering the question. But if you have it below you, cool. Even if you take it in person, you can have it below the table. I know a lot of times people take like squishy stress toys and things like that. I honestly am going to tell you that whatever will keep you calm and lower your anxious level, feel free to do that, right? But just make sure that you don't play with the items like in where people can see you. Hand gestures, be mindful of those. I typically talk with my hands. That is okay, but just kind of make sure that you're not like talking with a peace sign up like this in the interview, or you're not doing other things. So, of course, you may talk with your hands, but just be mindful of the gestures that you are using as you are speaking. Okay. Also be mindful of not maintaining eye contact. Honestly, I like to tell people to read the room. Um, Even this applies in a virtual setting for you to read the room. Where if you're looking in the camera directly, like be careful. Like if you're answering a question, that you're literally looking in the camera answering. Um, if you're in person, right, you want to make sure that if there's a panel, if there are five people, are you making eye contact when you are talking to all of the five people in the room? You want to make sure also that did you shake every person's hand in the room, right? But you want to make sure that you maintain that eye contact. Um, this is what we call a first impression. So you want to make sure that the way you show up the first time, you're remembered. Okay. Communicate by listening and speaking, right? You want to be mindful of that, right? That you are listening, but you're also speaking. So just make sure that you're engaged in the interview. And so it is okay to smile and be excited about the interview. But just kind of just be mindful of our expression and how we express ourselves when we go into this particular setting, right? As it relates to showing up and how you should dress, right? Dressing for success. Some of the things that you want to make sure is that you're dressed business professional. So for example, if you have a suit, making sure that you have a long sleeve suit and it's in black, gray, or navy. These are like the standard professionalism colors. I guess that's what you would like to say. And then as far as shirts and ties, you want to make sure that it's either white, light colored shirt, or if it, if it's a blouse. And I do want to pause here with my ladies. We want to make sure that everything that we have from the waist up, whether virtual or in person, make sure that it is professional. So making sure that we cover up our areas as well. As far as pants, not too tight or baggy. As far as shoes, neutral flats, pumps with a maybe a 1 to 2 inch heel. Um, Once again, I must pause here, ladies. We want to make sure that we're wearing heels that we can walk in, right? Just because they're cute doesn't mean that we should wear them, right? You may have to do some walking at the interview, but we want to make sure that the way we show up is good. So you want to be comfortable, right? You don't want to have to worry about, oh, the heel is too long, the heel got stuck in the grass. We don't want to worry about that. So we want to make sure we're comfortable. As far as my men, you want to make sure that you have polished leather shoes or, some standard black shoes. As far as accessories, you want to make sure you have a professional bag, like a tote bag. I know sometimes you may have a backpack or, something in that sense, but as it relates to showing up and dressing for success, you want to make sure that you have some type of professional bag. You also want to make sure that you have some type of portfolio or portfolio for your resumes. Okay. This is what, once again, we call a first impression. So you want to make sure that the way you show up, you're received in that way. So if you show up looking professional, then of course you can feel good knowing that this is going to be a professional conversation. Everything's going to go well. Okay. Do I have any questions about this here? About how you should show up, any things about dress. I do also want to extend the opportunity to you that we do have a career closet here on campus. That if you ever went to an interview, and the interview doesn't even have to be here on campus, it could be off campus. But we do have a resource, and it's our career closet, and it's a $10 rental fee and it's a 2-day rental. And so you're able to come in, you're able to select a suit. We have a feminine, or we have a masculine and a feminine closet. You're able to come access that, and you're able to check out a suit for $10, and it is a 2-day rental. Okay, so I did want to throw that out there and extend that opportunity to you all, just in case you need some type of professional dress. As you're preparing for the upcoming career fairs, once again, you can utilize our career closet as well. Okay. All right, so show don't tell, right? And what do we mean by that? And so these are going to be some questions that we're actually going to we're going to navigate through these questions and kind of talk about some of the things that you should do or how you should approach these questions. And so when we say show don't tell, actually showcase your, like, when you're talking through these questions, you want to actually bring out the values, the interests. You want to bring out these attributes and these experiences in your questions. And so sometimes it can be difficult to do that. And so now we're going to actually talk about how to do that. Okay. And so, as we begin to think about some of the questions that you may be asked when you go into interviews, um, you probably are wondering, well, why are sometimes questions are hard for me to answer? And so, we have a term for that where you have situational questions as well as behavioral questions. And so, with the situational questions, think about when you have encountered a difficulty or learned a lesson, accomplished a task, or experienced a great result, played a leadership role in the situation. And so these are things that, as you are beginning to think about situational questions, these things can come from jobs, volunteer opportunities, maybe an internship. Maybe you're leading in a student organization, and maybe you've had some situations that you can answer these questions just based off of coming from these areas. And I do want to encourage you, which you're going to see an example. I do want to encourage you that although it may not come from a job, you still have some areas that you can pull some situations from to answer the question effectively. Okay, so these are situational. And so, as it relates to the STAR method, I don't know if anyone on the call is familiar with this method, but as it relates to situational or behavioral, there's a specific method that you can use to be able to successfully answer that question. And so, the S in STAR stands for situation. And that is what was going on at the time, right? Who, what, when, where, what was the situation? The T stands for task. And so, just like I mentioned, what were your tasks? What did you do? And then as it relates to the A, that's the action. And so, what actions did you take to maybe accomplish the task or handle the situation? But then, as a result of the situation, task, and action, what was the results? What was the ending of the situation? What was the outcome of that? Right. So this is the method. Feel free, you could take a picture of the screen. But these difficult questions that you're getting in these interviews, this is a method that will help you break down your response to be able to successfully answer the question. Okay. And so I do want to go back because these are going to be some of the questions that we are about to look at, and it's going to actually tell you some tips on how you can answer those questions, right? So here's an example of the STAR method, okay? That if you want to take a picture of this, right, feel free. But this is a STAR method example. We're actually going to go through STAR. So, what's the situation? During my third year of college, I was elected vice president for the Health Professions Association student organization. The duties of the position included securing speakers for our meeting, advertising the programs to the campus community, introducing speakers, and evaluating each program. So this is the situation, right? We are letting the interviewer know overall, kind of setting the foundation, setting the stage for what we're about to talk about. Then we talk about the task. Previous attendance at meetings had decreased substantially. The goal was to implement programs to address the professional development of our association and increase attendance, right? So what was the task? So not only did the individual talk about the situation to even let, like I said, setting the foundation, setting the stage. They talked about the situation, but then they talked about the task in terms of what was our task to do, right? Then we get into the action where, as it applies to your resume, right, you're going to use action verbs to really enhance the transferable skill. So it still applies here in an interview question. I assembled a team. So once again, we're trying to figure out what did you do as a result of the task. I assembled, so using words like assembled a team to help the program design and speaker selection. I developed, once again, an action verb, a survey to determine the members' professional interests and ideas for possible speakers and topics. My team and I had each member complete the survey. Then we randomly selected members for a focus group interview. And then the reason why this next sentence is underlined is because I had learned about this research technique in my marketing class and thought it would help us identify why attendance had drops. I want to pause here because although you're trying to get a job, this is where all of this wonderful experience that you all are, enhancing while being a student currently, or just even a working professional, you want to try to bring in some experiences as it relates to what you're learning in the classroom. And so this is underlined because, as you can see, they're literally saying that the technique that they used was because of a technique that they were taught in the marketing class. And I think that that's valuable because you're bringing in your educational experiences in order to help you answer the question, but also get the opportunity that you're trying to get. Okay. And then from the survey and interviews, we found that students wanted more information about events through social media. Right. So now going into the result of that, so we're in the last element, R, which is result. Excuse me, because of the information we gathered from the surveys and interviews, we selected speakers for the entire year. So that was a result. Produce social media content describing each program and the future speaker. That's 2. And then under my leadership, the attendance increased 90% over the previous year. That's 3. So as a result of the situation, the task, and the action, this was the result. And then also 2, you see that the individual also told them that the attendance increased 90%, which was a great response to end this off, because you are accomplished, like you're letting the employer know we accomplished the goal, right? And so you want to make sure that you're able to quantify your experiences and highlight those accomplishments as a result of the situation that you're talking about. Okay, I want to pause here. I know that was a lot. Do we have any questions about the STAR method? Do we have any questions on how and where to use this method? Okay. All right. All right. So tell me about yourself. That is a question that you're probably going to be asked. But as it relates to tell me about yourself, these are some things that we don't want you to include in your response. And like I said, these are tips that, as it relates to tell me about yourself, I would encourage you to, and I'm going to show you all how to access some of our resources, but I'm going to show you all our elevator pitch worksheet. And even preparing for a career fair, where these are 2 resources that will allow you to kind of jot down who you are, right? How to answer that question. And so I can show you all how to access that. But as it relates to this particular interview question, you don't want to say your age. I know it's natural at times, but you want to refrain from saying your age, your nationality, your marital status. Um, I'm not gonna say personal interest or hobbies, because sometimes including that can kind of be like an icebreaker, depending on, like I said, the temperature of the room. You want to also leave out information about other people, negative statements about people or experiences, and then anything that is not relevant to the job. So that tell me about this question. Tell me about yourself. This question is for them to get to know who you are and why they, or why you are interested in the position. What makes you you, and then from there you just talk about yourself. But what was the first thing that we said you have to do, which is know yourself in order to be able to talk about yourself, especially when you get to this element, or if you were to be asked this question. Okay. Tell me about a time that you solved a problem. Okay. In the case of your industry, if you're a nursing student, they may say, tell me about a time you had a difficult patient. If you are in econ, tell me about a time that a t-test went wrong, right? Tell me about a time that you used this particular platform. What happened with the results? So just be able to talk about a time that either you solved a problem, or tell me about a time something went wrong. Okay. And so solve the problem. One of the things that you want to keep in mind is that as you're talking about the problem that you solved, here is where you can utilize the STAR method to help you answer that question. All right. So once again, what was the situation, the task, the action, and the result? All right. You want to keep it positive. And then you want to end with a solution. So you want to say, ultimately, I had to do X, Y, and Z. It was this problem, yada 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 yada. Like I said, you want to be positive, and you want to end with the solution. Ultimately, this happened, but on the flip side, this was the outcome of that. Okay, so these are some tips there. What is your greatest strength and area of growth? Okay, you want to stay positive when you're answering this question, right? You want to describe how you're working on your weaknesses. So, for example, you can say, if they say, well, one of my strengths is this, but as a result of that, I am willing to grow in this area. Or this is an area of growth. But as this area of growth, it's allowing me to be strong in this area, right? But you want to make sure that you're able to describe how you're working on the weakness, all right? I know this particular question can be very challenging, but you want to make sure that you're able to provide examples, okay? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? I know you probably are like, I'm just trying to get my degree and figure out what's going to happen then. But this is a question that is really a test, in my opinion, because I feel that the employer and the recruiter, I feel like they are wanting to see, longevity, right? Like they want to see, do you plan on being here, staying here, whatever the case may be. But where do you see yourself in 5 years? So in 5 years, you want to have an idea of where you're heading. Like I said, it doesn't need to be figured out, but just have an idea. So you could say, well, I'm hoping to obtain an internship to be able to get, whatever type of opportunities. And then 2 years later, I hope to obtain my bachelor's degree. And then 2 years after that, which I'm hoping that will be five, just have an idea of where you're going. Now, whenever I'm coaching students and we are sitting down talking about our goals and things like that, I like to say, I want you to imagine yourself 0 to 3 years after you've gotten your bachelor's degree, or, in this case, if you have a master's degree, but 0 to 3 after you get your bachelor's degree, let's start there. And then we can think about 3 to 5 after we've gotten the bachelor's degree. So ultimately, yes, where do you see yourself in 5? But if you are on the verge of obtaining a bachelor's degree, I like to say, where do you see yourself 0 to 3? And then from there, as we're becoming working professionals, then we can think about the 3 to 5. Now, if they come in just right off the back and say, look, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Like I say, you want to have an idea of where you're heading. You want to know, all right? They want to know that you're interested in the field and not going to leave within a month. Okay, you want to be realistic, you want to be humble. But like I said, a lot of times this question could mean longevity. It could mean, like I said, they want to see, do you plan to start and develop and grow and work your way up at the company, or things like that. So you want to be realistic. And you also want to remain humble when you answer this question. Okay. What are your greatest accomplishments? Okay. This use the STAR method. Right. So your greatest accomplishments, you could talk about a situation, you could talk about the task, the action, and then what was the result or the accomplishment of that. So as it relates to your greatest accomplishment, you want to be able to say, look, this was the situation at hand, but these were the things I had to do. And as a result of that, this is a greatest accomplishment. It could even be that maybe in class you did a group project and you're like, this is one of my greatest accomplishments because it gave me all the skills and knowledge that I needed to be successful at obtaining this certification in Python, right? So make it realistic. Maybe make it realistic according to your industry or the job that you're trying to do. It could be that maybe your greatest accomplishment is being a first gen college student who's about to graduate with a bachelor's degree. I don't know, but I want you to think about what is that greatest accomplishment that you're going to want that employer to know as it relates to coming into their company. Okay, what have you done that can be seen and valued as that accomplishment? Right, and so you can use the STAR method. And so at the end of, like, they may have their questions. And so I know that you all have maybe been in some, some spaces where they say, okay, well, do you have any questions for us? And you're probably like, I didn't even know I needed to ask y'all questions. So, as it relates to having some questions for them, you can feel free to take a picture of this slide. But as it relates to having questions for them, you can, I would say 5 to 10 questions. You want to have about 5 to 10 questions developed. But as it relates to some questions that you could potentially ask, what qualities do you look for in an applicant joining your team? What would a typical day look like? What do you enjoy about working at this organization? What is the next step in the hiring or the selection process? How would you describe the culture here? Are there opportunities for advancement or professional development? What are the performance expectations? Uh-oh. I have a student that says she can't see the slides. So I will reshare. Okay. What are the performance expectations of this position over the first 12 months? What are the biggest challenges that someone in this position would face? And then what else do you genuinely want to know within reason? Okay. And I do want to let you know that a lot of times the questions that you will develop or prepare throughout the duration of the interview, they could potentially get answered at they could get answered throughout the interview. And so by the time you get to this point, where you're wanting to ask questions, these questions are probably already answered. But I would continue to make conversation and build off of something that may have come up in the interview that maybe you want to know more about. So, for example, it may come up in the interview something about how they help you advance throughout your role. Well, you may have a question about professional development that is specific in terms of, well, do we have a month? Do we have a yearly budget? Do we have a quarterly budget? How does the professional development work? Okay. And so you may have a follow up question with a question that may have been answered. And that's okay. All right. But you do want to ask questions that are going to be fulfillment to like helping you realize like, okay, is this the role that I actually envision, maybe want to go into? So you definitely want to ask questions that are going to help you or give you the feeling that you need walking out of the interview. Okay, we're almost done. And so what you want to make sure that you do is ask about the next steps. You want to ask for their contact info, because I'm going to tell you why. And then you also want to follow up, right? But asking about the next steps, but then also asking them about their contact information is very pivotal, because if you wanted to follow up and send them a follow up email, this is pretty much a sample of how you would communicate. All right. So, hi, include the interview name. Please make sure that you remember their name. Um, if you want to write down, their name, refer back to the email, you can feel free to do that. But I hope you're having a great week. My name is, and I interviewed with you. And now if you interview with just one person, you're just gonna include their name. But if you interview with the team, then feel free. You can say I interview with you along with the team on the day for the whatever position. If it's an internship position, great. So you're gonna include that. I'm very excited about the opportunity to join. You're going to include the company name and help bring in new clients, develop world class content, or just anything else awesome you will be doing, right, with the team. And then you mentioned that your team will be finalizing a hiring decision on the environmental impact assessor position this week. I'm eager to hear when you have an update, and certainly if I may provide any additional information to support your decision making process, please let me know. And then you're going to say best regards. Now, as it relates to the process of following up, it's so funny that I use that we're talking about this. I use this example with my students yesterday that if, let's just say, you interview on a Monday and you want to follow up, feel free. You can follow up within the week, right? Let's just say you don't hear anything back and it's been a week, so it's a Monday later. and you still haven't heard anything, I would maybe try to do a courtesy call, right? You email, hey, I would just like to follow up on the email that was sent. Okay, if they answer the phone, great. If they don't answer the phone, it's okay. You can quickly send another email in response to the email that you've already sent. So that could be, hey, such and such, I just would like to follow up on the email that was sent, yada yada yada. Um, I hope you're having a great week. So same concept. But then at that point, if they don't follow up with you after maybe the second time, or if they don't even, answer the call, I would say just let it subside. And just be, just be patient. And I like to just want to encourage you that, on the other side of things, and it wasn't until I actually was the interviewer that I understood that yes, we set aside the time to interview individuals, right? And I can only speak for me, but I can kind of see maybe what recruiters and employers go through. Um, on the flip side, like we have another job to do. We have other things that we have to do. So just be patient, just be gracious, and know that it's not you. It could just be time is not on their side, and they are just trying to maybe finish up, get through the day, get through the week. Um, and so, not saying that they're not thinking about the position and what to do, but I'm just gonna be very honest. Sometimes time is just not on their side, so it's not their fault. It could just genuinely be that they are just trying to navigate the process as quickly and efficiently as possible. Okay, so don't give up. Don't think that, oh, it's something. No, it's nothing wrong. It's just a matter of them just trying to navigate the process. Okay, and so thank you. Your comments and your questions are welcome. And so at this time, if you have any questions, feel free to type in the chat box, or feel free to come off mute, raise your hand, and engage. Okay. But we want to thank you for attending our workshop today. And so if you do have questions, I'll stay on. But if you do not have any questions, you are more than welcome to to go ahead and remove yourself from the call. I do want to let you all know that as it relates to our website, okay, this is, and I do see hands. Great. I'm gonna get to you all. But for the ones that don't have questions, I do want to let you all know that on our website, on our career resources area, okay, we do have a section that you can come to and look at some interview preparation resources. You can log in. We have some recorded workshops that if you want to look at those. But then as it relates to some interview resources, if you're familiar with our Cool Careers workbook, you can access that by clicking one of these links. It will take you directly to the page. And then from there, it has like common interview questions if you just want to look and see what some common questions are. It has a page on the STAR method. So this Cool Careers workbook will be very beneficial for you. Okay, so I just wanted to share that. Okay, and I do see some hands. I believe Allison, you were first, and then is it Aglin? I'll get to you.
Yes, so my question was going back